Hi everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. In today's video I'm going to be reviewing this book, 8 Lives of a Century Old Trickster by Mirinae Lee. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. And in today's video I'm going to be bringing you another Women's Prize for Fiction 2024 long list review, and that is for this debut novel, 8 Lives of a Century Old Trickster by Mirinae Lee. 8 Lives of a Century Old Trickster begins in a retirement home with a prologue featuring a woman who is looking to write obituaries for the elderly residents that they contribute to themselves by telling her their stories. She asks each of the residents to give her 3 words about their lives to start her off. And this book takes in the story of Ms. Mook, who she meets and who tells her that 3 words is not enough. She needs 8. And 7 words that she gives to the woman are slave, escape artist, murderer, terrorist, spy, lover, and mother. We're then taken on a journey through these 8 lives of this nearly 100-year-old woman. And at times it is difficult at the beginning of this book to work out how a story fits into the timeline. So the 8 lives are not initially told to us in chronological order. However, this is a really interesting book to read. I went into this book knowing that it was quite a traumatic and brutal book. I had heard that from other people's reviews and from comments that people have left, and I would heartily agree that it is a very brutal book. I don't think that this is a book that will appeal to everybody. I do think that if you are sensitive to certain topics, and there are a lot of sensitive topics in this, then it probably isn't a book for you. However, I did really enjoy this book. Maybe enjoy is the wrong word, but I thought it was a really interesting and well-written debut. What I liked about this book was I really liked the sort of episodic nature of the stories, and initially I actually felt like, and this may be a slight criticism of the book, I'm not sure, I initially felt that they read like short stories, and when I got to the end I realised that some of these, especially the first few, were initially published as standalone short stories in various places, and that made complete sense of them for me. The later stories in this do get a bit longer, and they do sort of explain various details that then tie these initial stories together, which I thought was a very clever way to make this into a successful novel. So I liked that. I liked the different characters that we met and the different places that this took in. I felt like I was learning as well as reading a novel. This is about a Korean woman, and it does take in various wars, and various parts of her life take place in different places. Part of this is told in Korea under Japanese rule, and part of it is set in North Korea and part in South Korea. And I thought that the sort of historical detail in this, to me, and I don't know a huge amount about like the Korean War and the Second World War from that perspective, so whether or not this was historically accurate, I did really appreciate the historical details, and I thought that they were well written, and I thought that this was told from a really interesting perspective. I think the concept of this book and the idea of this book is a really good one, really strong premise, and I wasn't too disappointed having read it. I thought that there were parts that I appreciated more than others. I think the initial story that we're told doesn't seem to fit into the plot until later on, when it becomes clear where it fits, but I thought that that was a really, really strong story in its own right. I thought the most difficult story in here to read was called Storyteller, and that is where a lot of the brutality and trauma comes into this. One of my favourite stories that we were told was called Me, Myself and Mole, and it was just a really interesting look at different perspectives and the way different people see things. And I just thought that this book as a whole had an awful lot going for it. I really did appreciate what it did. For me, this wasn't like an all-time favourite book or anything. I did think that some of the later stories in this, although they explained things a bit better, weren't necessarily as compelling to me personally. I thought that this had an interesting ending as well. I won't spoil it. Overall, I thought this worked well. I think that it's one of my favourite books I've read from this long list, and I am really, really pleased that the Women's Prize brought this book to my attention, because it's definitely not one I probably would have heard of otherwise. It's always interesting to read new perspectives and books set in different places and in different cultures. This was compelling to read. I did stay up late finishing it, which is always a good sign. I would definitely be interested to read another book from Mirinae Lee, and I think that taken as standalone short stories, the stories that have been published separately from this are really, really excellent. I didn't always think throughout reading it that it was going to come together as a whole, but actually I think that it was successful. So do let me know in the comments, have you read 8 Lives of a Century Old Trickster? Do you think you will read it? And if you have read it, I would love to hear from you what you thought about the different stories within this, and whether you had any favourites, and whether you think that this will make it onto the shortlist. I would like to see this book make the shortlist for the Women's Prize. I think it's probably my second or third favourite I've read from the list so far. It's definitely in my top 6 as we speak. So for me, this would be worthy of a place on that list. I don't know what the judges will decide, but I think it's a book with a lot going on in it. But yes, a very, very brutal read, but one that I found quite compelling, and unlike a lot of the books that I've read on the list so far, had a pretty strong plot. In fact, it had several. Thanks for watching this review today. Please do give it a like if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And if you don't have a comment to make today, I would love you to leave me an emoji to let me know you watched the video, perhaps a number 8 or something else to do with this book. That's all from me today, and I will hope very much to see you all again very soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.